Hello, this is CandySun here, and today we have a special video. So with the tournament, I come up with some different strategies, and what I promised to y'all is that I would go over these strategies and explain what the thought process is in them, and explain what the strategies are designed to do. So today we're going to go over the pool strategy. In the future video, I will be going over the mixed eco strategies, as well as strategies done by other players such as Tyler. And we'll go from there. So today we have our pool strategy, which is engineer, wizard, and the third tower is a flex tower. So basically, before I get into the game, the third tower is based on what you want to focus on. You go ice for early game, you go ninja for mid to late game, and you can also fit in Dart Monkey there as well if you need help defending BFB rushes, but I believe that Ninja should be more than enough to be able to defend your way through the mid-game rushes. So with that, we're going to get into this game. And there we go. I've got a new setup, which is different, so now we can actually draw on the screen. So right now, you can see that I start off with an engineer. And what we do with the engineer is a very good starting tower on this map. It provides a very good mixture of grouped and point defense, which is unrivaled on pools. Dart monkeys are far better for group popping power, but on this map, you do not have to deal with much grouped. Even when they send eco, the group balloons are generally not enough to really mess with an engineer early game on here. It's not the other maps where you're sending constant eco. So, engineer actually works really well here for the early game, and can get you through those round 2 and 4 rushes especially. So yeah, he's starting off with the 2 Dart Monkeys. We got our Sentry Gunner. And the Sentry Gunner is enough for round 2. If they send eco, you can get up another engineer, but you don't have to. I mean, the point of this strategy is because it allows you for such an efficient defense early game. You're able to really get up eco and pressure them. And engineer just performs better here than Dart Monkeys do. I mean, just with how the paths go. It's not that engineer is better than Dart Monkeys, it's just this map. And you can see, like, if you look up there, that was a bad arrow, but you can see his lives are getting down so much. And it's really tough for him to start out versus this because of all the pressure he gets from eco. And you can see, we leak a couple lives, but we don't leak nearly enough to make it worthwhile for him to send constant pinks. And that's the thing, is the engineers are just enough to make it not worthwhile to send. Sure, you'll leak a couple lives, but the lives that you do leak are not worth it for the balloons that they send. And you can see he's already down to 20 lives if we go over there. I need to get used to this. But yeah, he's down to 20 lives because of the constant pressure. And now he has to have 4 Dart Monkeys for round 6. Because otherwise, he's going to leak to death. And it's not that he's playing bad. It's just that there's so much pressure. And it's really tough to adapt to it with Dart Farm. And he's got the Wizard. So he's pretty good for round 8. With this strategy, you generally do not want to be rushing round 8. And the reason is because you barely have enough money to defend round 8, because I go for such a high eco. If you notice down here, we have a 443 eco, and that is really good for pools. But if you notice that it's just enough to afford that Lightning Wizard for round 8, and the Lightning Wizard is just enough to defend round 8 with the engineers. But you just gotta keep in mind that what this strategy does, it gives you barely enough defense to survive these round 8 through 11 rushes, but gets you plenty of eco to give you money for the round 13 and on. Because what happens with a lot of eco strats on here is they get too much eco or they get too little eco, and you're really screwed either too early or too late. And it's really easy to play around. So you can see right now we have about 2,000 saved up, which means we can get up another Lightning Wizard. And 2 Lightning Wizards will defend round 11. And we don't really have to worry. I mean, you can see he's sending a bunch of whites, but again, it's not enough to make anything happen. See, we leak a couple lives to AI, but really not enough worth it. And one thing I do want to point out before we get into these other rounds is, if you notice my lives up here, we're at 135 lives. And that is the biggest benefit to this strategy. For sure, you get all that early game pressure, but none of that would be worthwhile if you get the biggest lead possible on this map, and that is via lives. And what that does is, if you look in this game later on, you'll actually see that we tank a round 13 rush. And we're able to do that because we have 135 lives. Actually, I'm not sure if we tank it in this match, but nevertheless, you're able to tank smaller round 13 rushes, which means that they have to send a strong round 13 rush first time. It doesn't mean that you're able to defend every single round 13 rush without battle energy, but it means that they have to send a larger rush, which means that it costs more money for them. So, if we get back into this, you'll see that we're getting into round 14, so he doesn't round 13 rush us. Now, he probably is afraid to counter rush. He doesn't have much money. Notice he only has 210 farms here. And he probably has around 270 eco or so. So, we're winning the economy battle right now, which is insane considering its pools. But also, notice that we're saving up so much money. And, you see, we're rushing. He's rushing. And, before we get in any further, you'll notice that I rushed first there. And the reason I rushed first there was because he had no defense. Just because you go eco does not mean that you can't play aggressive. You just gotta be smart in your aggressive. And those terms seem contradictory, smart and aggressive. Because smart, you're like, oh, I'll just defend everything he sends. There's way more to this game than just defending everything they send. Sure, that's great that you can defend everything you send, but that's only half the game. If you can't kill your opponent, how do you expect to win? And if they're smart and they realize you can defend a lot of stuff, they're just going to take it late game every single time. And you got to realize that you don't want to take it late game every time. If you do, you'll start getting bored of it. And you notice that a lot of people who play competitive and stuff, they get really annoyed by late game. And that's not because late game is inevitable. That's more because people do not play aggressive. And in competitive play, I can see more of an advantage to that because you want to play safe. You want to not mess up. And if you're playing aggressive, you open up room to mess up. But with eco especially, you cannot play passive. And that's a common misconception that eco is a passive playstyle. And that eco, oh, you just defend everything you send. No, you go eco because it forces them to get up less farms, which means that you're constantly harassing them. They constantly have to get more defense. If you're farming, they will get up more farms than if you go eco. And that's just an inevitable fact of it. So, the reason you go eco is to pressure them like this. And you notice how little farms he had here. And that is because we are pressuring him. And you'll notice that we still rushed. And you send, on your first rush, you send just enough to cause him to react. You do not go all out because they can just battle energy it. And they can micro that. But you send just enough to make them react. You see, we caused him to hit the battle energy. He lost about 10 lives. Obviously, he didn't die. I mean, that's not the point of the rush. The point of the rush was to bait out his battle energy with as little money as possible. And then you notice that we're selling towers to go for the all-out. And you can, if you just keep watching a little, you notice we hit the balloon boost. And, okay. Before we go a little further, I want to point out his balloons are further than mine. this is another awkward scenario. You're in a scenario like this where they send Bloons before you, and you realize, oh shit, I'm gonna die first. This is why you oftentimes layer pinks in your rush. And the reason you do that, now provided they aren't like spamming juggernauts or something like that. If they're spamming a bunch of juggernauts, pinks are not going to be effective. But against a defense like this, why not send pinks? You send the initial regrows to overwhelm their defense, and you layer the pinks underneath them because they're so much faster. Especially Bloon boosted. So, he followed it up with some rainbows. I mean, if he had just sent straight out pinks, he would have done better against, or he would have killed me. A lot easier than he did against this. I'm not sure if he would have won or whatever, but this is also where our lives come into play. Since we have so many lives, we can just tank part of the rush. We can leak 133 lives before, and just make him leak 10 in the same amount of time. He has to make us leak 13 times as many lives, which, if you notice in this game, is the difference. So, we get there, I'm down to 19 lives. So, and if you look down here, you see how close this game was to him winning. And the difference there was the pinks. And they're just fast, and you gotta be able to play around that. Now, I will say during the match that I really wasn't thinking. And I know it sounds weird, but I think this is one last tip I can give straight from this game, is that if you spend your time thinking too much, you're going to overthink it. You just gotta play and go by instinct. I didn't think to send pinks. I just sent pinks. I don't know why. I literally was sending zebras and I just randomly started clicking pinks. I'm like, what? What am I doing? And that is probably the biggest tip I can give, is you just gotta practice. I mean, from the 2 years or so of battles I've been playing, it's muscle memory to send pinks now. I don't think about sending pinks like that, but I just send them. So, I think that's all I can really do for this game. But y'all can look at the tips I've given for this game and look at the upcoming 2 games. And in those 2 games, you'll see me use the same strategy again. Once against Dart Farm again, except he's able to get more farms, and the other versus an eco strategy with Cobra, and you can see how it fares. Now, there is one last thing I do want to point out with the strategy. It's very skill-based. It's not, oh, you go this strategy, you win. It's not necessarily better than the other strategy. This strategy purely gets you to these rounds. That is the sole purpose of this strategy. Once you get to these rounds, it is pure outplay. You do not win by just defending everything. You win by outplaying. And this strategy gets you to the point to where you can outplay. But to be able to outplay, you have to have practice, you have to know what you're doing, and you have to be aggressive. So, with that, hope you all enjoyed, and enjoy the next 2 games.